ahead and get started. We have a tight schedule today, and I want to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask the clerk to take attendance.
Chair Hood.
Present.
Representative McKinney.
Here.
Representative Brayback.
Here.
Representative Weiss.
Here.
Representative Martis. Representative Beeson.
Here.
Representative Cavett.
Here.
Representative Schutte.
Here.
Madam Chair, there are 7 members present. A quorum of the subcommittee is present.
Thank you. Without objection, absent members are excused. And we'll move to approve the minutes of the March 12th meeting. A motion from Representative Cavett. And so ordered without objection. And I'd like to invite Luke Trumbull, the supervisor of the Dam Safety Unit at Eagle, to present on dam safety and dam safety replacement. Thank you for joining us, Luke.
Good morning. Oh, sorry, afternoon. We ticked over there. Travis Boskell, Deputy Director with the agency. Luke Trumbull's our Dam Safety Unit Supervisor, and Luke's going to walk you through a little bit of what we've been able to do in the dam safety program over the last few years with some of the legislative investment, and then talk a little bit about some of the funding streams that we have and what we've used those for and what those look like over the next couple of years. So with that and the tight agenda, I will turn it to Luke.
Thank you. All right, slides are up. So, as Travis indicated, I'm Luke Trumbull. I'm Supervisor of Dam Safety Unit. And I'm going to talk a little bit first about a little bit of background about the program and then get into what we've been doing recently. So, next slide. First is just an overview of dams in Michigan. There's over 2,500 dams that we know about, and lots more that we probably don't know about. Of those 2,500 plus, approximately 1,059 are state-regulated dams, so they fall under the Dam Safety Statute or the Inland Lake Level Statute, or more commonly known as the Legal Lake Level Statute, and fall under our purview to regulate those dams. About 75% of those dams are privately owned and 25% publicly owned, so that's kind of the ownership breakdown, and you can see the map on the right. Every blue dot is a dam in our inventory. There's dams in every county of the state. A lot more in southeast Michigan concentrated, but you can see there are dams scattered throughout the state. In addition to the state-regulated dams, there are 92 federally regulated hydropower dams. Those do not fall under the purview of state dam safety regulation, but do exist and do present some hazard. And that leaves roughly 1,370 dams that do not meet the size criteria to be state-regulated, are not FERC-regulated hydropower dams, and do not have a court-ordered lake level. So those are the kind of the smaller dams that don't pose as much risk as some of the larger dams. And just a note, of the state-regulated dams, 87 are high-hazard potential dams, which means that if they were to fail, they could cause loss of life, severe environmental or economic degradation, threat to the public health, safety, and welfare. Another 149 are significant hazard, where it may endanger individuals, but loss of life is not expected, and slightly reduced environmental or economic degradation. And the remaining 823 are low hazard potential dams, where if they were to fail, the environmental and economic impacts would be quite a bit less, and it's not likely that people would be endangered by failure of those dams. Next slide. So a little bit about the roles for state-regulated dams. FERC, or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, has no involvement with those dams because they do not generate hydropower or do not fall under the Federal Power Act. DNR kind of act as Eagle's sister agency. They would coordinate with us on permit applications for repair, modification, removal, and they act as the state's experts in wildlife and aquatic organisms and stream function, other things to protect the natural resources. In the Eagle roles, we administer Part 307, which is the Inland Lake Levels Statute, which is where a court-ordered normal level on a lake exists and a dam regulates that level. And also we administer Part 315, Dam Safety, which is relates to any dams that are over 6 feet high and impound at least 5 acres of water. So some dams are regulated under both statutes, some are one or the other. And we permit any work on those dams, including construction, repair, or removal. We do inspections of state and municipally owned dams, and then we review inspections by private engineers for privately owned dams. And then we provide support to other programs when a dam is included in a permit application received by Eagle. And for those hydropower dams, those 92 I mentioned earlier, FERC's role, or Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's role, is that they oversee all dam safety and operation of that structure. Their federally regulated hydropower dams are exempt from state regulation under dam safety. So FERC will consult with state agencies on environmental issues, but typically not on dam safety issues. DNR would provide recommendations to FERC during licensing of hydropower projects. So a dam to generate hydropower and put that power back on the grid has to hold a license with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and those licenses expire every so often, and DNR would provide comment during that relicensing period and represent the state's interest for natural resources protection. Eagle, we don't have a direct regulatory oversight of those dams, as I mentioned, but Eagle, different units in Eagle do issue the Section 401 water quality certificates under the federal, or the Clean Water Act, and we do also still issue permits for work around those hydropower dams if they impact streams, wetlands, floodplains, things like that. So the environmental permitting still applies. And I'd be remiss not to mention a lot of the catalyst for the next part of the talk is, was spurred by the Edenville and Sanford dam failures, which happened on May 19th of 2020 during a large rainfall event and high water event that caused the collapse of the embankment at Edenville, which subsequently resulted in overwhelming overtopping and failure of the Sanford Dam downstream and all the flooding that followed. And this is just a photo of the aftermath of the Sanford Dam failure as well. So immediately following those failure events, Governor Whitmer did issue a directive to Eagle to do three things. You cause an investigation of those failures to determine the contributing factors. Also to perform an evaluation of the dam safety program and the state of dam safety as a whole in the state of Michigan, and report those findings back to the governor. And so the first step of that was a fully independent forensic investigation of the failure. That work started in 2020, August 2020, and finished in May of 2022 with the final report. They definitively determined the causes of the failures. Of Edenville was static liquefaction, and basically that just means that the soils and the embankment became so saturated that they lost all their strength and kind of flowed like a liquid. So the high water in the lake saturated the soils in the embankment and caused them to wash out. And then that washout and subsequent release of Wixom Lake to the Tittabawassee River overwhelmed the capacity of the downstream Sanford Dam and caused the water to go over top of that dam and cause rapid erosion and failure of that dam. So that was kind of the finding of the independent forensic team investigation. That report is available. It's a pretty good report. But then we also, around the same time, started with an evaluation of the dam safety program, which started with the Association of State Dam Safety Officials peer review, which kind of reviewed our statutes, our staffing levels, our funding, our administration of the dam safety statute, how we're doing on compliance enforcement, and the strength of our laws and things like that. That concluded in September of 2020 and served as the jumping off point for the Michigan Dam Safety Task Force. And they used those recommendations from ASDSO to develop their recommendations to Governor Whitmer. This slide is just a brief overview of those 86 recommendations that came out of the task force report. 7 were related to funding for dam owners and the dam safety program. 11 were related to legislative and authority of the dam safety program. 16 were just general dam safety practice improvements. 6 were related to a progressive compliance and enforcement program. 7 were related to emergency response in the event of a dam failure or incident. 33 were related directly to the management and funding of the program itself, the dam safety program. 2 related to safety and security at dams, and 4 related to public outreach and awareness. And so the next ones, I'm going to hit a little bit on some of the high points from those 86 recommendations, what we've been able to implement or what we have ongoing. And this is just kind of the bullet list. That's the staff in the dam safety program has expanded. We're updating our review standards for when permit applications and dam engineer or dam safety designs come in front of us. We've tried to standardize and update our review processes. We've increased our public outreach and awareness. We're trying to be in the field, reaching out to communities more often, have more open lines of communication with those folks, be more involved. We're using a risk-informed decision-making process and prioritization. So we've basically quantified the risk that each dam in the inventory poses and then rank them from top to bottom of level of risk. And then we concentrate our efforts and resources to address the ones at the top of the list first and work our way down. And we're working to do more progressive compliance enforcement, not let lingering issues remain lingering issues, try to move them to the forefront and make progress. We've stood up a grant program, which has been hugely successful in my opinion, and we've established an emergency fund, which gives the department the ability to act when a dam owner is unable or unwilling to do so and the dam would fail otherwise. So this is a kind of a cool, I was on all of these maps, so at one point there were 2 of us plus a half-time supervisor in the dam safety program. I was in purple at the bottom. I covered the lower half of the lower peninsula. Immediately following, the dam failures, we expanded that to 3 and kind of divided the state up into three parts. Since then, we've hired additional people, divided the state up into 4 parts. So we have staff engineers that oversee all dams, administration of dam safety in those regions, shaded in the far right map. And we've also hired a grant staff. I was promoted to supervisor, full-time supervisor of the program. We have a dedicated grant administration staff, and we have another engineer who's he's based out of Lansing and does mostly program development and helps implement some of these recommendations. So we've grown from 2.5 to 7 full-time employees, which is great. Another success, I would say, is the Dam Risk Reduction Grant Program that we stood up in 2022. The initial round of proposals was in 2022. It was funded by Public Act 87 of 2021 and Public Act 53 of 2022 at $13 and $28.2 million one-time funding. The first cycle, we received 57 pre-proposals and a total request of just over $51 million in project costs. We invited 23 of those pre-proposals to submit full applications after doing an initial screening by level of risk those dams pose to the public, and that was a little over about $26.5 million in total request. In the last year, we awarded $15.3 million from both of those funding sources and to fund 16 projects, including 6 dam removals, 4 dam repairs, and 6 engineering studies, which will hopefully eventually lead to a repair or removal of dam. This year, we're in the meat of the review process right now. We did have a pretty good increase, 12% increase, so we received 64 pre-proposals with a total of $68.4 million, so it was more closer to a 40% increase in funding request overall. So it tells us a little bit that the cost of projects is unfortunately going up, but we invited 29 of those 64 to submit full applications, which is a total of about $33 million in total requests. The plan now, with the remaining funding, is to award approximately $14 million this year to those highest scoring projects, and then that would leave about $14 million in available funding for the next year's cycle to do the same. And if the program is to continue beyond 2025, we would have to secure additional funding. All right. A dam safety emergency fund. This was also in the Public Act 87 of 2021 as a budget line item. As a recommendation from both ASDSO and the Michigan Dam Safety Task Force was, the dam safety program has always had the authority to step in and take action when a dam owner, after issuing an order to a dam owner to take action to prevent dam failure. We've always had the authority, but we didn't always have the means to implement a big project. You know, if the actions necessary to alleviate that danger cost a lot of money, that was a very difficult lift for us. So the emergency dam safety, or the Dam Safety Emergency Action Fund, was funded at $6 million to give the department direct access to funds that could be used in the event that that we had to step in and take action at a dam to prevent failure. Currently, we're undergoing 2 projects where we're using those funds currently to fund initial drawdown of the impoundment and then removal of the dam to eliminate the hazards associated with the dam. We're expected that will expend approximately $3 million when it's all said and done, which would leave $3 million in that fund for future years if future dam safety emergencies pop up. And then another strong recommendation from both the ASDSO peer review and the Michigan Dam Safety Task Force was to strengthen the dam safety laws in the state of Michigan to bring us kind of in line with the federal standards and other states in the area. And some work was done in 2021 to draft reforms to Part 315 and Part 307 that would do so, and those have not advanced since then. We believe that to fully recognize, have the authorities and the ability to meet the recommendations of the task force, that those reforms in some fashion would be needed. That's it.
Mr. Trumbull, thank you so much for stepping up to lead the growth of this department and to serve the state as best you can with limited resources. I appreciate your work. I'm sure that we have many questions, but we also have many presenters, so we're going to go ahead and close out your time with us for the moment. I think my office will circle back with you in regard to some of those next steps, and with Mr. Boakskool as well. And I'd like to invite Stacy Hissong, the General Counsel for the Michigan Association of County Drain Commissioners, to join us. And Stacy, I have a comment that you wish to speak, and it'll be 10 to 15 minutes. If you can lean towards 10, that'd be great. Thank you.
While they're setting up the presentation, again, I serve as general counsel for the Michigan Association of County Drain Commissioners, but my law firm represents about 60 different counties relating to their drain commissioners' offices or their lake levels. And before Mr. Trumbull leaves, we have the opportunity to work with him on a great number of projects, and I think the state of Michigan is absolutely blessed to have him involved. You don't see a drain commissioner saying very nice things about Eagle staff very often, but I can tell you that he is very well respected, and the grant dollars that have went to that department are very meaningful to the dams that received that money. I know that we are working on a number of lake level projects that are in line for that type of grant money with improvements to the water control structures in several counties across the state. And so I'm very thankful that grant program is being funded. All right. Now we can move into the presentation. So with regard to this, I want to talk about, and again, we're very lucky that we have a drain commissioner on the committee, or a former drain commissioner on the committee with regard to Representative Cavett. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we have drain commissioners and why we have a drain code, and then why it's a struggle to do that. So you have to remember, Michigan is the Great Lake state, and so we have unique problems in the state of Michigan that go with that responsibility of being the Great Lake state. So out west, they may have a problem of not enough water, and water boards dealing with who gets what water. We have the opposite problem here during a lot of times of the year. And so Michigan, unique to other states, has a drain commissioner. There was what was called a fence sitter, where their job was to have fence disputes and disputes about drainage that actually moved into an elected office with statehood and when we were a territory. And so it's a unique but important position uniquely to the state of Michigan. And with that, we have a drain code, which if you would like to have a nice time going to sleep tonight, I suggest you get a copy from me. There's 600 sections of beauty right there of how we try to navigate our state's problems. So with regard to that, I want to explain why do we have drain commissioners. So here's kind of a picture of a hydric soils where we're sitting right now. You may not know this, but the location where we're at was under several feet of water before Lansing became the capital. And this fella out of New York State bought it sight unseen, thinking he could sell it to other people, not realizing it was underwater. He gifted the property to the state of Michigan, knowing that if they made this the capital, it would be drained, making all the surrounding property more valuable. And so much of the state has hydric soils. Again, we're the Great Lakes state. We have water to deal with. And so we've effectively drained this to live in, to grow crops on, et cetera, but it comes back really quick if you don't take care of it. Macomb County looks the same or worse. I mean, this is what our state looks like, especially in the lower parts of the Lower Peninsula, and it is a challenge every day to deal with this, and that's why we have elected drain commissioners. So, why am I here today? Why are we here as drain commissioners? Because it is not getting any easier to do our job. We have a kind of a death by 1,000 cuts with regard to what's happening. We have aging infrastructure. Many of the drains that we're dealing with, I just reviewed some in Wayne County from Civil War era that we still utilize today. Reviewing drains in Gladwin County yesterday, still from the 1800s, 1870s in Branch County. And so our infrastructure, many of them might have been last improved during the Depression when we had the programs during the Depression to do that, and we're still utilizing those in hopes of keeping our land drained, and they're too old. Then you combine that with the record rain events that we are seeing throughout the state, and we are seeing rain come in much more traumatic events in terms of where it might rain 3 inches over the course of a week or 2 weeks, and what we're seeing is maybe that 3 inches in 2 hours. That makes a difference. And then when the Great Lakes are high, ground level waters are high, it's like trying to empty a bathtub into a room that's already full of water. There's nowhere for the water to go. Continuing development, especially in wetland areas. Wetlands were storage for water. When they're gone, we have no nature storage is gone. And then we're seeing as each subdivision goes in, where do you put a new subdivision in 2024 where it probably didn't make sense to have one in, the 1990s, and it's more difficult to find drainage for that. So you take all of these things and put them together, and it makes it extremely difficult to keep basements dry, to keep roads free of drainage, to keep crops from being ruined with standing water. And so I'm just going to show you some pictures from around the state. This is not a certain region problem. This is a statewide problem. I could show you pictures from each of your districts as to what the issues are. I'm just going to play a little highlight film for you, though. This is in Muskegon County. This is called the Chaddock Drain in Laketon Township. Wayne County, the big one, North Branch of Ecorse Creek, they always have this problem. To fix that is a $600 million price tag just to get it up to maybe a 10-year storm event. City of Detroit, I don't know if you have had your basement flood before. I have. It is one of the most traumatic events you can go through. And where do people put their wedding photos, everything like that? They put them in their basement. And so our job is to try. You don't think of the drain commissioner until this happens to you, and then you're mad. I know Mr. Kavitz probably never got that before when he was a drain commissioner, somebody angrily calling him about a flooding issue in his county. This is the Jockstream City of Taylor. McKinstry Drain down in Canton Township, where everybody's trying to get the water out of their, with sump pumps out of their basement. UP 2018, Houghton County. Iosco County, that same event that I know Representative Schutte is very familiar with that caused the dam failure in Midland County, didn't just cause the dam failure there, it caused several other failures and massive flooding issues that we were not prepared for. This is just last year in the city of Bag Rapids. This is just last year at Spartan Stadium. We have not solved our stormwater problems. We have not even come close to solving our stormwater problems in this state. Kalamazoo County, Portage, Oneida Township, just in the last couple of years, Eaton County. So what can we do to deal with this? I think as drain commissioners, there's two main issues. One, how drain code assessments work. I think for those of you who have city water or city sewer, you get a bill every month, quarterly, annually. You pay it, they build up a fund. You're used to paying it. You see what it's for. You're flushing your toilet, you're turning on your water. With drains under the drain code, you only get assessed when work is performed. So if you're not working on your drain, you may not see an assessment for years. Nothing, 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 nothing. And then we have to do a project. And so we've built up no money for improvements, no money for maintenance, and then all of a sudden it's a huge assessment. We have no extra funds. Not only that, you rarely see, because we have the ability to levy assessments, grants that are where drain projects are eligible. We have a tiny percentage of SRF funds go to drains. Most of the time, the SAW grants, we had some grant eligibility. Most of the time, stormwater doesn't get the funds. And that's unfortunate. Then the second problem that we have is in the drain code, last amended and recodified in 1956, so we're working on a few years with the same toolbox, is that you could only work on the drain itself. So you have to make it bigger, wider, deeper to solve the problem. One, to get an EGLE permit for that in 2024 is very expensive. Culverts, to replace those, to upsize some those, and I'm going to talk about culverts in a minute, is very expensive, and it's not the right way to solve the problem. So with regard to legislation that we've tried to come up with is water management districts, and there's current bills with regard to this to allow us to think outside the box in managing water and using storage pockets throughout the whole watershed. I know in Representative Schutte's district that's something they're looking for the Tittabawassee River. I sure don't want to make the Tittabawassee River a county drain or an inter-county drain. There are other ways that we can try to help take the pressure off. And so these bills are currently in the House, and we're hoping that that can help us with those problems. Some funds to do some watershed management planning would be appreciated, I know has been recommended. And so your thoughts with regard to that and your support would be very much appreciated. I want to talk a little bit about culverts because this is a big problem when it comes to money and problems. So when I'm talking about culverts, I'm talking about a pipe underneath a road where the water course isn't so big that you need a bridge, but you have to get water through. And so if you have an undersized pipe, you're going to cause flooding problems, but it causes a lot of other problems besides that. It causes scour afterwards. It's problems for fish passage. There's a lot of different, no, I'm going pretty fast. It causes a lot of problems. So we see, I know one of the engineering firms has like a calendar of crappy culverts throughout the state of Michigan and what I would say MacGyvered by different people where they've taken different things to make one because they're so expensive. And so these cause huge problems and are very expensive to fix. We ask for funding from you every year to help fix those. We don't get any. I would really like to get some money so we can try to start fixing some of these because they cause more problems than just flooding. They cause road flooding, and then you're going to see a lot of sedimentation issues with regard to that. When you have a backup because of flooding. When it does come out, it comes out like a fire hose, and it blows out the sides of the drain when it comes out during a storm event, causing even more problems. Then it causes the sediment transport downstream, and it creates an expensive issue to deal with, not only in the culvert itself, but everything downstream from there. To get an idea of how much culverts cost, I asked your Kent County Drain Commissioner to give some cost of an example where they just did one. One of these was $240,000. I asked the Saginaw County Drain Commissioner to give me a recent one too, again, about $208,000. That's expensive to deal with. The road commissions have to deal with them too. And when I say this, you're thinking, oh, that would be great. Let's give them a couple $100,000 to replace the culvert. No. In Kent County, like just the Walker number 4 drain, 3 miles of drain, there's 23 culverts just on that drain. The Phelps drain, a mile and a half, there's 8 culverts. Saginaw County, New Tamarack drain, 47 culverts. If you add each one of them up, they're not always this much money. That's a lot. To make the drain bigger, just in the culvert size, is millions and millions of dollars. The North Branch Ecorse Creek drain in Wayne County that I just talked about, 73 crossings. They're not little ones. They're huge ones. That's why our bill is $600 million to try to fix that drain. We need some money for culverts to help solve some of these problems. The property owners can't afford it without help. And then the last one that I want to talk with you about is under the drain code, the DNR, and I realize that may not be the purview of this committee, but I'm going to want to talk about it anyhow because it irks me, is that the DNR is exempt from assessment. And if you are in a drainage district as a property owner where the DNR doesn't pay, you have to, as a property owner, pick up their share. So we just had an intercounty drain in Gladwin and Midland County where DNR owned a third of the watershed. Their share was several $100,000 that they didn't have to pay. The neighboring property owners had to pay. I went to the day of review. People were in tears, crying, because they had to pay an exorbitant amount because you can only assess the lands in the watershed. When the majority of that is the DNR, we can't assess them. We don't get money from them. It causes a hardship. You would think that's only in the northern counties. I have a state park and an intercounty with Washtenaw, Oakland, and Wayne where we have the same issue. I could tell you in each parts of the state where this is an issue for those people who are unfortunate enough to be in that situation. I have a drain in Saginaw County where the DNR has bought up all the property but one in that district. That property owner has to pay the whole bill because the DNR has bought up all the other properties and they're exempt from assessment. And so we have legislation that we are suggesting for that to allow the DNR to be assessed for drain assessments as well. Tried to keep this brief. As you can tell, I could probably talk about this with you all day and be more fired up than I am now. But we're asking for your help.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hisong, for your wonderful demonstration of some of the water management issues the state faces. I'd like to invite Palencia Mobley, the chairperson of the Michigan Infrastructure Council, to join us next.
Hi there, good afternoon. I'm Amanda West, Legislative Director for the Department of Treasury, and I'm here to introduce Palencia Mobley, the Chair of the Michigan Infrastructure Council.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for having us here. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Michigan Infrastructure Council, its founding, what we are working on, and what we plan to do over the course of the next year. So the history of the MIC starts with the Michigan 21st Century Infrastructure Commission in 2016. That led to the completion of an asset management pilot in 2017 and then what we now know as Public Act 323 in 2018, which actually created the Michigan Infrastructure Council. As part of that package, MIC was created along with a Water Asset Management Council, which complements the Transportation Asset Management Council and formally puts the TAMC inside of the MIC structure. So what is asset management? All of us here either have a house, a car, or something, and that house or that car requires some level of maintenance to it. So we generally know a roof is going to last you about 20 years, maybe 30. We know that every so many miles you have to get an oil change. You know, it used to be 3,000. If you got, you know, a newer car, it's 5,000. If you're electric, you're not changing it at all. And so asset management is what we do to actually maintain things that we own that have value. And if we're smart about those investments, it saves us money over the long time. A big key for the Michigan Infrastructure Council is interagency coordination. So I actually had a thought this morning when I was thinking about the new electric road that's in Detroit, and I no longer work in city government, but I said, I wonder, did they replace the water mains, and did they make sure the sewer infrastructure was okay? Because this is, you know, one of the first electric charging roads in the entire country. And so the level of coordination you need, whether it's with state transportation agencies, county transit agencies, multimodal, electric, whether it's publicly held, right, or privately held. All of these different entities have to work together. And really, there's funding, which they all have different funding streams, whether it's ratepayer-based or not, public or private, whether it's grant funding, whether it's taxes, general fund, and then planning. The best way to coordinate is through planning at the very beginning, right? Not waiting until you're doing the project, construction, and then maintenance of operations. So we've implemented a few programs at the Michigan Infrastructure Council so that we can start having these conversations. I don't know what that means, IT. Are we okay? Okay. All right. So we've implemented a few programs at the Michigan Infrastructure Council. I have been doing asset management all of my career. When I first began working as an engineer, I walked around the entire Detroit wastewater treatment plant, which that's not what it's called now. That's how old I am. It's had a name change. But I walked around that entire facility and got nameplate data, literally recorded what was on the nameplate of a pump, of a motor, of a conveyor belt, of a belt filter press, and put that data into a database. That's asset management. You have to know what you have, and you have to know what it is and where it is. And so we've done a few things, our asset management readiness scale, where agencies get free access to determine where they are in their current asset management practices. Is it that, you know, the plant supervisor knows everything, and if he walks out the door tomorrow, you can't take care of any of your assets? And then we've also done asset management champion training, so that within organizations, we are creating asset management champions, people who understand the language, people who understand what the business risk exposure is. So if you have the probability of something failing, how likely is it? But what's the consequence of that? Probability of failure times consequence of failure is the business risk exposure. So we are teaching people about that. Not just the engineers that work on staff, we're teaching electeds, department supervisors, et cetera, have all been in the asset management champion training. We also did a project portal. That project portal initially was set up so that we could see where conflicts may, I shouldn't call them conflicts, opportunities for collaboration. So different agencies place their potential capital projects or things that they're projecting that they're going to do into this project portal. And where there were opportunities for collaboration, people began to have conversations. Well, okay, if you don't take this out at that time, maybe we can push this further down the road and we can do this collaboratively. And then what we are working on now and plan to release in the coming weeks is the 30-year integrated infrastructure strategy for Michigan. And really it's the way of saying, can we all just play in the sandbox together, leverage what we have, and make the best use of ratepayer and taxpayer dollars. A little bit about the Water Asset Management Council, which resides under EGLE. there are 3 tasks that they're really working on. One is collecting data on drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. And there are over 800 plus water systems owners in the state of Michigan. The other thing that they're doing is developing a report to the legislature on the asset condition of the drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater assets. And then they're developing recommendations for conditions and goals and how to track how utilities are meeting those goals. There's not a lot of consensus or cohesiveness, and as someone who used to run a very large water utility, we're not all reporting things the exact same way. Stormwater flooding, this is probably one of my favorite topics and one of the things I probably got most known for in Detroit, is every time it rained, everybody called me. And in 2021, that was like the beginning of the end, I should say, in terms of just the level of catastrophic events. We don't think about land use planning the way we need to in this state. And I think, thank you so much for the presentation you did, Mrs. Song, regarding showing just where water is. There's water everywhere. And so if we think we're gonna develop on top of everything and be successful and kind of outdo climate change, we're not. Explaining this to the public, you know, the public thinks stormwater is clean, they shouldn't have to pay for it, you know, it's great. But when I explain to them, if I pour water on this table right now, is the table gonna suck up this water or is it gonna run off? It's gonna run off. That's the same thing as doing on your rooftop, pavement, sidewalk, et cetera. So it has to go somewhere, and we have to have infrastructure for that. Rising lake levels. I think I was traveling in 2019 when the Detroit River kept raising so high, right, that it created overland flows. And those were private seawalls. Those were all private property. That was not public property on the Detroit side. Mechanical flooding. This is basically just 2 things. One, we have power failures that occur just because of the intensity and the types of storms we have. But 2, none of this infrastructure is sized for this. There's flooding, and then there's the typical 95th percentile, whatever that event is now, because it's not even the same number. But those types of events change how our infrastructure responds. Nobody created infrastructure for 7 inches of rain to fall with six inches of it falling basically in an hour. And then capacity flooding. Again, we're not sized for what is occurring today. There is no dedicated funding source for stormwater. I was very fortunate in the entity that I ran that the way the ordinances and codes were set up and some of the language, even though we were under legal challenge about some of it, we had the ability to charge for drainage because of how it was defined in codes and ordinances a long, long time ago. But most communities don't have that. Most communities do not have the wherewithal to go forward and ask for a tax if that's what they want to do, or implement a fee structure. And so there has to be a way to have dedicated revenues for stormwater management. And I want to say there are districts that are separated systems, which have different issues with stormwater challenges, and districts that are combined systems that have different stormwater challenges, but they all need funding. Deferred maintenance. You know, our infrastructure is like the Ron Popeil set it and forget it, and I feel like I'm dating myself now, right? But we put things in the ground and we never think about them again until the hole opens up, until you see a sinkhole, until it's flooded, until you're driving down the freeway and your car becomes submerged. And we cannot continue to treat infrastructure in that way. It requires maintenance and it has to be maintained. These are regional problems that have local solutions. I have not had an opportunity to review the watershed districts that Ms. Hassan talked about, but I do believe that is one of the critical things around stormwater management challenges. Water knows no boundaries. Water could care less if I'm in Detroit or if I'm in Novi. It is going to seek its lowest level and it's going to get to where it wants to get. And so we've got to think outside of the box in terms of jurisdictional boundaries. We've got to think about how the watershed, how the land is flowing, how the water wants to move. And then public perception. I didn't get people to really believe in stormwater management until they started seeing green infrastructure. Green infrastructure is not a panacea. It is not for large events, but what it can do is minimize the impact on our existing infrastructure systems, and it also provides natural benefits as well as nature benefits, as well as in some places economic benefits, because property values tend to increase where you have more nature as part of the landscape. And we need more data and planning. We don't understand what we have and what the investment needs are. I've talked about green infrastructure, sewer separation. I was in a combined system for 8 years, and looking at previous reports for the previous 30-year cycle, nobody thought sewer separation was the answer. But what did I implement in parts of Detroit? Different places where we would do partial sewer separation so we could manage the stormwater. And then data-driven decision-making. A lot of decisions are based on what data you have. If you don't have data, you can't make decisions. Many of our utilities really do not have the software systems or the human or financial resources in place to adequately monitor their assets and to use that data to drive their decision-making. And with that, I am done.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mobley. Again, we have very limited time. I want to ask just one quick yes or no question of you. If we fund road infrastructure and fail to fund water infrastructure, are we allowing the Michigan Infrastructure Council to do its work?
No.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And I'd like to introduce Kim Balk, the Program Director for the Conservation Resource Alliance. Welcome, and thank you for joining us from Northwest Michigan, all the way from the Traverse City region. Good to see you. Thank you. You need to press the red button.
There we go. I work with the Conservation Resource Alliance. It's a private nonprofit organization. Our office is in Traverse City, and we work throughout Northwest Michigan. We have 10 staff. Our mission is to coordinate sensible stewardship of the land and water. We're supported by the public and private grants we secure for our projects, also memberships and donations. We have two main programs. The first is River Care. Under this program, we do road stream crossing improvements, dam removals, stream bank stabilization, and stream habitat and recreational access sites. And then our second program right now is Wild Roots, and it's basically a reforestation effort on both public and private lands. And so I'll share with you some of our dam removal projects. We've done about 43 dam removals in 7 watersheds the last 20 years with partners. The flagship dam removal project we were involved in was the most comprehensive dam removal in Michigan to date, removal of 3 dams on the Boardman River in Grand Traverse County. Here's a picture of each of the powerhouses there. 3 of the dams were built for hydropower. The 4th dam, the most downstream, was built to support a grist mill, processed grain, right in Traverse City. These dams were built between 1867 and 1931. They were all decommissioned in 2005 when Traverse City Light and Power determined it was no longer feasible to operate them to create power. They didn't create enough power to begin with for our current day and age usage, and they all needed updated spillways, repairs, and relicensing with FERC. So just a run through of the primary benefits of any dam removal, really. Environmental, community, and economic benefits. You know, we're improving safety of the site, we're providing outdoor recreation, and then we're providing a better fish and wildlife habitat by going back to a free-flowing river. Our project team for this effort was comprehensive. State, federal, tribal, local folks were all involved. Our organization served as the project manager to this team. Any project that CRA does, the team is the key to the success, and I want to thank our state agencies, DNR and EGLE, for always being a part of those teams. We appreciate that. With this project, the Grand Traverse Band definitely rose as one of the leaders. They helped to provide funding, sign contracts with the Army Corps of Engineers, and provide technical assistance. More prominent leaders, some Army Corps staff pictured in the lower photo, and local leaders as well, the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. And here's a photo, obviously, with Senator Stabenow at the second dam removal. So a crunch of all the funding, the removal of 3 dams cost $27 million over 15 years, and it was from 30 different sources. And you can see pretty diverse makeup: federal, state, tribal, local, private sources. So some photos of the dams. This was the first dam, Brown Bridge, built in 1921. Had an extremely long earthen embankment, 1,650 feet. A lot of the dams that we deal with today were built anywhere from 100 plus or minus years ago. The core wall here shows the timber framework used to essentially bring in fill and create the dam. And so this is it today, and you can see that long green vegetated earthen core wall and the powerhouse at the end of it. We had to dewater this site and also put the river back where that powerhouse was. You'll notice the sandy fringe in this this photo, and that's because once it was decommissioned, the state determined the spillway did not have enough capacity to handle high water events. So we had to draw down this impoundment for safety reasons. This is a during photo. All of those dots are tree stumps. And then you can see how the muck flats were at the bottom of the impoundment. And then this is after. We restored almost 3 miles of river throughout the impoundment and through the original pattern as well. One of the primary components of dam removal is sediment management, and what we mean by that is, in this case, all of the sediment that had built up in the impoundment stayed on site, but we had to move it around. We had to essentially unbury the river channel. And so this is after. Hauling sediment offsite would be an extraordinary expense and add to the need of fundraising for the project. The second dam was called Boardman Dam, and we had a little more room here. You can see that core wall, it's separate from the powerhouse, it's detached. So we had more room to dewater. However, with this site, and this is a common theme with dam removals, we had infrastructure we had to build. And you can see the arrow with the future bridge. The river had been moved when this dam was built, and so you can see the seep area downstream of the bridge. That seep area is from the original channel. So this is during. You can see the new bridge was built in this photo, and the dewatering method is ongoing just upstream of it. And then this is after. A close-up of the bridge that had to be built. This was that seep area. Ended up building a 250-foot span bridge in its place. We had to do this a year before dam removal, and fortunately the Grand Traverse County Road Commission and MDOT secured $3.31 million to build the bridge before we could remove the dam. So essentially we built it in the dry, which was a cost savings as well. And then here it is with the river flowing under it after we removed the dam. Here's a close-up of the dewatering method. We used 14 gravity-fed siphons to drain the impoundment down 20 feet, and then we drew it down the rest of the way through that concrete-lined channel. This was a $1 million operation, but it worked, went smoothly, and was well worth the cost. Dewatering is another primary component of dam removal projects. And just some bank stabilization practices. Soil lifts are used when you don't want the river to move at all, so we did these near the bridge. When you're further upstream in the impoundment, you can stabilize banks with large wood, also provides habitat, and this is after of that same spot. So you see you have your floodplain bench on one side for high water events and then a stabilized bank on the other. And then here's the third and final dam of that project. Sabin Dam had the smallest impoundment, but it was the most shallow. It was the most full of sediment. And you can see here during dewatering how just those large flats of muck surfaced. We used a different dewatering method here. The concrete was deemed strong enough that we could chip it away and it would drain the impoundment without washing it away. So the best time to remove a dam is before you absolutely have to. So imagine if this spillway was another, who knows, 30 or 50 years old and it was crumbling, we would not be able to dewater this way. We would have to likely do the $1 million gravity-fed siphon method. And then here's an after photo of that. Just a couple of during photos of how, it's essentially a moonscape underneath these impoundments. Water flows through the path of least resistance when we draw them down, so we have to recreate and unbury that river channel. When we find leaning log tree stumps, we know that we found the original channel. They managed 120,000 cubic yards of sediment with this project, but the engineers estimated 322,000 cubic yards of sediment were sitting in this impoundment. So think about it. These dams, they literally create muck. Any fallen leaves, pine needles, tree branches, animal waste sits in these warm, shallow impoundments, cooks, and becomes dark organic matter. We found as much as 13 feet deep of muck in some spots. That makes the dam removal more expensive as well. And just some wood placement. The impoundments were so big we had some creeks within them, and we restored those too. The Sabin powerhouse had been rebuilt twice, and the river had been dug down 8 feet below its original bottom. So we had to build it like a brick house to bring it back up to grade. And this is after, looks quiet. That in-stream wood blends right in. There's walking trails in this area too. And after dam removals, we often do tree planting, invasive plant species control, and then monitoring as well to make sure things are going as they should. Just another dam removal that we've done up in Emmett County was for Lake Kathleen on the Maple River. And the common theme of neighboring infrastructure, the dam was right next to the road that had 3 culverts. The culverts were inadequate for the stream as well, so we removed the dam and built a timber bridge in its place. The concrete on this spillway was breaking apart, so we weren't able to draw down right through the spillway. This dam had a colorful history. It had been rebuilt, I think, 3 times over the years. We also had a pipeline crossing further upstream in the impoundment that had to be rebuilt. And this site had also accumulated quite a bit of sediment. We ended up doing sand traps here and removed 90,000 cubic yards of sediment over the course of 5 years. And we used gravity-fed siphons for this site because the concrete spillway was breaking apart too much. And after, it looks pretty quiet. We reconnected 50 miles of river upstream of this dam. Partnerships indeed are the solution for all of these complex projects. And we had 45 funding sources on this one. This was a biggie. Let's look at a small dam removal because these are incredibly common. I bring this one up. It's on Deer Creek, a tributary to the Betsy River. These creeks, they're small, but they're the immune system of our rivers. We don't want to rely solely on hatchery fish. These creeks are where fish reproduce naturally, provide great escape and hiding cover. But again, this was a small dam. It had 2 road crossings right next door to it, so we had to replace and remove everything. Down in the Pere Marquette watershed, Lake and Mason counties. Another small dam removal. This one was out in the woods, pretty quiet, on private land. You wouldn't think much of it. However, it almost blew out one year during a heavy rain and snowmelt event, washed 80 cubic yards of sediment downstream and almost took out the county road with an undersized culvert downstream of it. And so we ended up redoing 2 road crossings as well as removing the dam. And there was a railroad grade downstream of the culvert, so lots of infrastructure out in rural Mason County. And just before and afters. We do have a dam removal in the planning stage in the village of Baldwin in Lake County. This is looking upstream. We actually have 3 water control structures in this picture, and then we have a rail trail that the state owns just upstream of that. So whatever we do with these dams will affect that bridge that's up there that is over 100 years old and undersized. This is looking downstream. This site used to be a fish hatchery, owned by the state as well, coincidentally. Just some old historic photos. It was originally built for a sawmill and a grist mill, and then it was turned into a hatchery at some point. We haven't found the exact year, 40s or 50s. Also provided water for the nearby railroad that's now a trail. But here's a cool aerial photo from the 50s of the site. And everywhere there's a red star, there is a predicament. You know, we've got a sanitary sewer line running from the village of Baldwin 5 feet below the river bottom that we're going to have to protect. We've got raceways, we've got multiple dams, we have an island. We have all the things here. But the good news is that we just finished an options analysis with DNR funding and funding from Great Lakes Fishery Commission, and we've made two important decisions. We know where we want the river to go, which is on the left, and then we have to build a sea lamprey barrier, and that's on the right. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission and Fish and Wildlife Service are prominent partners here. They do not want to have to lampricide almost 90 miles of stream upstream of the site. And so the typical steps with any dam removal is step 1, options analysis, build your team. Step 2, design, then permitting, construction, post-restoration, and then fundraising and communications with every step. And we have an awesome team for this project as well. We do have a dam risk reduction grant to help pay for design, so thank you for that. And just another small dam removal that's in design stages with DNR funding with the America the Beautiful grant that they have. We have 2 small dams on the Boardman-Ottaway River on a tributary that are owned collectively by 29 property owners, 1 landowner association and 1 single landowner. Some of them didn't even know that they owned this. They thought it was state land. But the dams almost failed together 2.5 years ago, so now we have funding and we're working on design for removal. And then we do have a dam removal going to construction this year in Oceana County. They own this Marshville Dam on Stony Creek. There's about 6.5 miles of stream upstream of this site. Another one started out as a grist mill, converted to a dam for a fishing pond. And another common theme, county road right downstream of it. So we have to do everything in one fell swoop. You can see what the site looks like, though, during a heavy rain. The chocolate milk water, very turbid. We have the triple culverts downstream under the county road up in the upper left. And then downstream of that, we have an abandoned bridge, so we have to take that out as well. And the end product will be a timber bridge in its place and no dam. The impoundment for this dam is drained out. However, the stream channel is monotonous. It's all sandy and wide, so we'll be doing some habitat up there and also building a fishing access platform.
Ms. Balk, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we do need to wrap up.
Okay. Well, this is the last dam site, and this is the one that is we're trying to fundraise for. It's in the village of Boyne Falls. It's under M75. The village bought this from Consumers Power in 1956 for $1. The village has 380 residents. They're 0.55 square miles. They do not want to have this responsibility and risk anymore. And so we actually submitted to the Dam Risk Reduction Grant Program for feasibility study money, and our hope is to pursue removal of this in combination with MDOT building a bridge. And there's also another small dam and a trail at the upstream end of it. But you can see MDOT built a second spillway in 1991 because they were concerned about the main spillway. But this impoundment was 24 acres, and now it's 7. It's so full of sediment. So even if your spillways are okay, the sediment that continues to accumulate upstream of them is a risk. And so our hope is that this project will be starting hopefully in the next couple of years. But thank you for your time.
We hope the project will start in the next couple of years, too. And thank you for your time and effort to join us today. We really appreciate it. Sure. Really thorough review of some of the dam contexts that are more rural in nature. So a good view overall of the challenges Michigan faces in managing water. Thank you all for joining us today. I believe we are prepared to adjourn with no further business. The meeting is therefore adjourned.